Hi, this is Greg Burt with the California Family Council, and we have some special guests with us today who are in Washington, D.C., and they have just come out of the Supreme Court after hearing a case that we have been waiting for a long time. We have Elizabeth Wanning and Ken Williams um, and Isaac Beck with a great organization that we've been working with for years. And so, if you guys can just describe who you guys are with. We first came together here in California when California tried to ban something that they call conversion therapy, but it's really what they're trying to ban is the ability for people to leave the LGBTQ identities and behaviors and to follow Christ. They tried to do that here in California with the passage of AB 2943 back in, I think it was 2018, and that's where we first met. And you guys came and testified at the Capitol just of your desire to be able to live out your faith the way you want and get the help you want. And so I'll let you guys kind of just start off explaining who you're with and something about your organization, and then we'll talk more about the case itself. So
Go
take
for
it away.
Sorry, I'm getting a phone call, a random phone call with no caller ID. You know how that is, and I distracted there. So, I mean, Changed Movement, we are from Northern California, and Ken and I are both pastors, and we started we started creating a safe space really for people who were questioning their sexuality, who desired to follow a biblical sexual ethic. And both of us have that in our past. And no sooner had we gotten started and we started sharing our backgrounds and equipping churches really, then California tried to pass that bill. And you and Jonathan met us in the season of the first hearing. And we ended up sharing our testimonies of leaving LGBTQ culture in several of the committee hearings. And out of that, then we got the impression that no one in the Capitol believed that people like us existed.
Even after we testified.
Yeah, we were called frauds or
They don't know us. They think we're the only two.
gay, they're just lying, any of those things. And Ken and I, we are not married, though co-founders.
Married, just not to each other.
That's right.
Yeah.
Both of us have been married to our spouses for almost 20 years. Ken has 4 beautiful kids. And so we started reaching out to our friends with similar backgrounds as us and published a book that we called Changed, which very succinctly brought our point forward. And ended up, you invited us to your rally on the Capitol steps. And we all shared our testimonies. And that video that you streamed went viral. And we started hearing from people across the world saying, me too, that's my background. And this grassroots movement or grassroots network emerged that we've been stewarding ever since. And so we do quite a lot of church equipping and pastoral care. And then we also have stayed in the policy realm, kind of supporting Family Policy Alliance and other organizations as they've addressed kind of the political advance of
Testifying
LGBTQ.
in different hearings in different states. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. And so, and Isaac, why don't you describe your role here?
Well, my role is serving Ken Elizabeth's vision as the project director of advocacy and government affairs. And that means I get to be the smiling face of schmoozing and making sure that we get into the rooms that we need to be in and that their voice and their stories are heard.
So let's talk about the case itself. This is the Chiles versus Salazar case. This is a Christian counselor in Colorado who has filed a lawsuit against her own state who has a similar law that California has banning any type of licensed counseling for a minor who wants help with overcoming, lessening same-sex attraction that they don't want, or a young person who has gender dysphoria, who believes they don't think they think they're another gender than they actually are, but they want to align their thoughts and feelings with their real sex, and they want to follow their faith. This is really about getting help for folks who want to base their identities based on their faith and not their feelings themselves. And so that is what's happening here in California. So we've been very interested in this. And you, I believe, were you all three in the courtroom today? You all
Yeah.
made it in. So I would just maybe love to hear your initial impressions. First of all, have you ever been in a Supreme Court case where you're actually in there hearing the case before? What was that like?
A dream come true for me. I was geeking out, going back to all the courtroom dramas I've ever watched. Only it was at another level at the Supreme Court. Yeah, just a huge honor to get to see several of my heroes up there, justices, asking their intelligent questions on my life dominating issues, vein. It was powerful to me to see what they knew about same-sex attraction or LGBTQ issues, what they cared about, what they wanted to know more about. It was really awesome.
How about you, Elizabeth? What were your impressions? Or Isaac, either one.
Well, I mean, I think all three of us, it was our first time in that setting, at least sitting in on an actual case being argued. And for me, I just love a good argument. And so it was fascinating to sit there and listen to what really was two decent arguments. One of them obviously doesn't make sense in reality, but the argument itself is well structured and entertaining to listen to. And it was fun to see the justices come back with logical questions that you don't have to have a law degree to understand what they're trying to get at and the points and the holes that they're poking in the argument. And so it was really fascinating to go in and go, oh, almost all of America could sit in this room, hear these two arguments, and they should come to the exact same conclusion that they've carried for so long and that so many around the country have believed in. And so I'm very hopeful after today.
Yeah, it
Right.
was interesting because I got the impression that to a certain degree, the justices are trying to be outsiders looking very objectively at the law, which we rarely are in a setting where that is the case. The majority of the time in a public arena, it's heavily weighted towards protecting LGBTQ culture. And in this courtroom, it was much more neutral. It wasn't that it wasn't overly conservative, nor was it overly liberal. And so there were objective questions that were asked and an obvious exploration of the implications of the law. And I thought that was really, it was so refreshing, honestly. It was real discourse.
And
Wow.
it was encouraging for me to hear, because for us, being that this is the big issue in our life that God's brought us out of, it was awesome to hear it get boiled. In many ways, the case get boiled down, at least for several of the justices, to, well, this is in Ken's language, not theirs. In the state of Colorado, if you're a minor and you're having any kind of gender or sexuality conflict, all roads lead in the direction of LGBTQ for that minor. That you can't get help from a professional counselor to go any direction except for in the LGBTQ direction. And at least one or two of the justices took issue with that and were like, you could tell they were thinking, shouldn't you be able to determine, should all roads go that direction, or should there be other options available to people? I thought that was big.
Yeah, there was a recognition that there could be fluidity in that realm. And then, so the balance of the arguments from my perspective, on the one hand, is this just purely viewpoint discrimination? Or is this a matter where the state government should be should be capable of or should be entitled to controlling what happens in a medical setting. So really, a lot of the conversation, I thought, or a lot of the discourse revolved around, is this a medical setting or is this a place of dialogue? And the Colorado argument is that essentially speech, where you have a licensed medical practitioner, so the therapist is a medical practitioner, the speech itself is akin to, say, a pharmaceutical drug. So of course, if we knew that this pharmaceutical was harmful, then the state would have a responsibility to ban it. But of course, the speech element so then comes into view of, is LGBTQ an ideology? Is it a medical issue? Is it a biological issue? Like, are we talking about civil rights? Or what exactly is sexual orientation? And honestly, I think I would love to see out of this court a healthy conversation about what sexual orientation is. Like at one point, Alito was asking, okay, so under this law, if an individual who is experiencing same-sex attraction goes to a therapist to try to change his behavior, that isn't necessarily changing their sexual orientation. From our standpoint, right, is that a matter of identity, just changing your behavior? Whereas from the Colorado standpoint, the presumption is that any change of behavior is an effort to change sexual orientation. And so there are a lot of gray areas that got exposed in the dialogue.
Yeah,
today.
that was good. Yeah. At one point, Justice Roberts said, just because they are engaged in conduct doesn't mean their words aren't protected. So he was really leaning heavily on the speech must be protected at most costs, which I think is very helpful for our case as well.
Right. Well, and then the other side relied heavily on these studies that they were claiming proved that any attempt to change someone's gender identity or sexual orientation was innately harmful, right? And how did that debate go?
Well, so in the rebuttal, Jim Campbell was able to point out that those studies have flaws, and so obvious flaws among them. From our standpoint, among them, they're self-report. So self-report, there's no concrete, there are no boundaries around or no controls for what the harms specifically were, whether the so-called conversion therapy took place in a therapeutic setting, or was it, a prayer line somewhere. Like a lot of the controls were very, very vague. And then we know.
Explain are you talking self-report, meaning we'll put out a questionnaire, hey, who wants to comment on their conversion therapy session, call in here?
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of like a Yelp review.
Right,
I mean,
I don't know how, I haven't looked specifically at the studies today, so I wouldn't want to comment on the details, but Jim Campbell suggested that a lot of them were self-report, which is what Trevor Project uses, right? The same kind of information that Trevor Project uses. Oh, all of our kids have experienced suicidality or they've experienced conversion therapy, and that's all based upon their presumption that they know what conversion therapy is precisely, and that they all experience the same kind of harm. So for example, the studies lump talk therapy in with aversion techniques like shock therapies. And obviously those are completely different categories. And
haven't happened in 40 years, at least.
Psychologists never use aversive therapies today, or I have never heard of it. At least I
had a lot of therapy on this issue, and I never had any of that. And that was in the 90s, early 90s.
But then on top of that, all those studies only canvass people who identify as gay. So anyone like us who have moved into LGBT categories and then moved out, we don't identify as gay. So we don't get captured in the comments for those studies. Like we're not solicited to,
Yeah.
because we don't identify as gay.
Sampling bias times a
only
million.
people who identify as gay are used in any of or all of those studies.
Wow.
And so that's a very high level of bias. You know, if you identify as gay and you decided to maintain that identity, then that's a 100% fail rate on conversion therapy. No wonder the statistics are so high. They never asked anyone like us.
No.
Wow. So what were your impressions of the as you left? You know, we have a court where folks know that there's more conservatives than there are liberal justices. Could you see a difference between the two sides? And when you left, who do you think was winning per se?
Well, I mean, it seemed clear, at least from my perspective, that a lot of the people that were going in hoping that Colorado would be defeated in this case left hopeful. And even from the justices that, you know, seemingly lean more liberal more often than not, their questions, a lot of them, Justice Jackson in particular, it really seemed like there was some there give in her arguments and in her questioning. You could tell that she may not be as convinced of this idea as, you know, the general public might be. So it to me, it really seemed hopeful that that it's a victory nonetheless to walk away
Yeah.
from. And it's just a question of by how much.
Yeah.
You know, one of the surprises for me, I wasn't sure what to expect. So we've been planning for months to attend, and we were planning to participate in the rally that ADF and Help Not Harm were planning to host at the Supreme Court building. And then, of course, after Charlie Kirk was shot, they did a reevaluation and decided that it was too high of a security risk to host that rally. And so I today wasn't too sure what we were going to be confronting today. And of course, Ken and I, we get a good balance of vitriol and support if you look at social media. So I didn't know what we would be facing going into the courts. And honestly, it seemed to me we were surrounded predominantly by lawyers.
Yeah.
And I didn't run, you know, there were very, very few people that looked to me like, I want to be cautious here. So no one could tell how many, you know, were on either side, how many Colorado supporters versus non-Colorado supporters. You just couldn't tell. And that really surprised me. Like it was very, very, people were engaged. There wasn't any activism at all around the courts. You know, there was a picture, you know, the New York Times featured a picture of a group that were standing out there with placards, but they were allowed to walk up to the Supreme Court building, take that photo op, and then they dispersed.
Yeah.
You know, and so even with the new protocols for getting in, the lottery system, et cetera, there just was a lot less energy around the court and in the court than I was really expecting.
And most of the bits of the conversations we overheard seemed to feel like they were maybe more conservative in nature. You know, it's hard to tell.
Right. So how long before we get a decision on this? Did they indicate that?
Yeah.
Not that I heard.
I'm not sure that there's any way to tell.
Right. And you know, if the decision goes our way and Colorado's law is struck down as unconstitutional, what does that mean for California?
Well, it means that their conversion therapy ban for minors will be declared unconstitutional. So that will open up the opportunity for all of our detransitioners to finally find help. But honestly, the psychological associations, the APA and the American Psychological and American Psychiatric Associations, they really don't have protocols for desistance. Like
What's desistance?
you don't learn how to to desist. You don't learn
And
how
you're
to
talking
be.
about people who are identifying as another sex or another gender, right?
Living a trans life in
Yeah,
some
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so there's just so little science and research done around the new phenomenon of transgender identity for youth.
Right.
Um, Hopefully what this opens up is a greater diversity of research and opportunity to understand this phenomenon. But I want to be cautious in saying that now suddenly you're going to be able to find counselors aplenty who will be willing to meet with you and walk with you through questioning your gender or your sexual orientation in a very neutral way, especially in California. I don't expect much of a change in climate, even if the law changes.
A change in climate among counselors, or just the hostility towards, helping people change, or, encouraging that.
Well, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I expect there to be an escalation of fear, an escalation of vitriol from the progressive left on the issue, like a doubling down on the LGBTQIA issues.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
like I'm not, it's not, I don't think California is going to roll over on this. And so I think it'll be the beginning of a very interesting public conversation. But at the same time, what I'm watching is a lot of Gen Z questioning what LGBTQ is and what it means for their lives. Like, what is it? Because Charlie Kirk's murder has rocked quite a few people who identify as LGBTQ and Christian and non-Christian alike. And so I'm hopeful that this begins to open up the conversation on what is this and how should I address it in my life, so that there's not so much censorship and suppression of information and dialogue.
Right. Yeah, I'm hoping there's better debates, because one thing about hearing the arguments this morning is you actually heard somebody critique when they say the evidence is overwhelming. If you watch most of the news coverage, they repeat over and over conversion therapy. It's been debunked by every medical, they
Right.
don't even go into how is it debunked? What actually is conversion therapy? Is
Right.
it's all bad, and we're not debating that anymore. And so to hear the Supreme Court justices deal with the evidence and have somebody like, hey, these studies are biased, and here's why, right? And I thought it was very poignant at the end. At some point they were talking about why their studies are flawed, and they said there is no study dealing with minors receiving this type of talk therapy, voluntary conversations, right, that only regard involve minors, and that only regard just conversations that they want to have. Like there's no studies. We never hear that when this
Yeah.
is debated about. So
No.
I hope this, it really does open up the conversation, even within the church. Like, I think the church is all nervous about how to help people. And, I know you've been really working hard on that. You even
Mhm.
put together some curriculum that churches can use. Can you, just as we close, can you tell us something about that?
Yeah, we upon Charlie Kirk's assassination, which is just still so hard for everybody, um, we're just even more aware of the pain inside of the LGBTQ world. I mean, Elizabeth and I know it personally, but no matter what happens to the law, people are still going to be in pain over their sexuality. And so we firmly believe from our own experiences that a healthy church, like equipped men and women of God, understanding how to come alongside people, is really what really does bring transformation in people's lives like mine. And so we made the decision to take our $400 product. So we did a comprehensive video training for every Christian, and then some add-on sessions for pastors, and we just made all of that free a week ago. And so anybody can go to changedmovement.com and download or just view online navigating LGBTQ for free. Give it to your pastor, give it to your friends, because that's I think most Christian people want to help. I think they want to show love. They want to help people live a godly life, but they're so scared on this issue because of how much it's in the media and all the scary things that have happened attached to it. But they don't have to feel that way. That with a little bit of education, I think most men and women can really, really make a difference.
That's awesome. Any closing comments from any of you as we end the interview that you didn't get to say, or?
Well, Greg, as I was walking out, and even as I was walking in, I did talk to somebody that was there who was in favor of the state and hopeful that the state would win. And as we left, I caught him walking out, and he just smirked at me. And I said, "So what are you thinking?" And he goes, "I think it's obvious you guys won. Your argument's too hard to argue with." And we both just kind of laughed. I said, "Really? You think we won?" And he went, "In my opinion, you guys definitely won the case." So, I mean, I'm leaving fireworks going off like, okay, now we prepare for what this new world looks like after.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, this will affect California, but it'll affect the world because these types of bans are being used everywhere. Canada, Australia, Europe, Western Europe, all the way into South America now beginning, and all of it's seeking to shape public policy matters, not just the individual's life experience. And so this is really, I'm excited to see how this will impact the world if the Supreme Court decides in favor of free speech.
That's great. Well, thanks so much for joining us. I'm sure we'll do some follow-up videos, but this has been great.
We appreciate
Thank
y'all
you,
so
Greg.
much. Y'all do amazing work.
Take care.